my left, I have Marco Kusumawijaya. Yeah. Marco is the founder and director of RUJAK Centre for Urban Studies, RCUS. It's www.rujak.org. It's a website and an organization that is dedicated to the building of better, sustainable Jakarta. So in essence, they are the better Jakarta, but longer, and they're the veteran and also more established than our new outfit and initiative. He likes everything about the city, and he's very passionate and quite radical in some of this concept. I think he will throw us some very interesting question about what is public and what is common. He believes that, sustainable urbanism and architecture, can actually collide together, and that's reflected very much in the projects that he does, whether they are commercial or whether it is for RUJAK, which is more for community building and also public urbanism.
I must tell you the truth that I came with different ideas to say to you, but just after being here, I changed completely. And I just think it's more appropriate to talk about what is near to you, something that I saw yesterday on my day of arrival. Which is this. Have you seen this? Lucky Garden, Bangsar, KL. Big applause. Because for me, this is a very good example of placemaking process, from basically no place public space to become yes place, common space. And I will talk more about what I mean by common space. And more importantly, it was transformed with a touch of art by, my good friend Seksan, which now it's famous. I saw his name all over the media by now. When I knew him like 20 years ago, he was a very shy person. And I think he is still very shy. But for this, he has taken a year off to really help this process of change that I'm sure you are expecting, hopefully, on May the 5th. But what is important of this space for me is that there are keys which I found very important, which is the people, the community, activity, ownership, content, not just the form, but content in the form itself. People are entering the space, people are doing something. Seksan told me that he has lived there for about 18 years. And actually, this was the first time he entered the space. And when he organized this, and neighbors coming during a negotiation with the authority, he also found out that most of the neighbors here have been living here without anyone getting into this space. So this was really the first time they entered the space, April the 14th. Of course, it started to become political, as you can see the figure there. Okay? But I think, becoming political is not a curse. It is just a way. Because, architecture is always political because it is always public. It is among the most political field and practice, in my opinion, because it is about a very important resource, which is space. And if you talk about architecture as a building, it is always surrounded by public spaces, or it forms public spaces, as Forster's building always shown that to its excellence, or it could be the public space itself. So everything public is political. But for me, more importantly, through architecture, people have this capacity to create a very basic common place. Of course, most of the time when we talk about public space, we talk about this kind of confrontation between the private and the public. Being defined as such. Public means accessible to all, private by invitation only. The problem is a current trend in many emerging economies is that the rate of production of private space, public place, like this one, is higher than that of the public space, public place, as the latter became stagnant. I'm not sure about Kuala Lumpur, but in Jakarta, for example, in the last 10 or 12 years, we built 4.5 million square meters of mall or other commercial spaces for trade. And I think it's very little public space is added in the city. Perhaps it's happening also here. I don't know. You tell me. But what I want to attract your attention to is also the distinction between public space and common space. Public space, one important aspect of public space is that it is mediated by the state. When there is problem in public space, you call upon the state to mediate. The prime example of public space is actually the street. If you have problem in the street, you call upon the police or the authority to help you. If you have conflicts between citizens, for example. But common space, in my opinion, could or used to be directly managed by communities, and communities actually pre-existed nation states. We are communities before we have our country, actually. You know, we live in communities, and this is especially quite distinguishable in post-colonial countries. There are communities before the new countries are formed after the colonial time. So the question about Lucky Garden is it becoming common space instead of just a public space? Seksan told me that Lucky Garden was empty before he did the planting. People living in that area for more than 10 years, 20 years, but never entered the space. It is public, meaning that it belongs to the state. It is mediated by local authorities. But by doing something into it, I think the people there have been trying to transform it into a common space. If you have heard, perhaps you have read the story that local authorities tried to take out the flowers, but then neighbors came by and said, "No, don't take it away. We want it that way." So it's about a confrontation about who is the authority here. It's the neighbors or the local authority. You know, I think it shows a very clear battle between what is public and what is common. Common meaning it belongs to the people in the surrounding area, not necessarily mediated by the authority of the state. But the public is, of course, mediated by the state. And I think another aspect which is important when we talk about place, and that means space, how to transform place into space into place, is that architecture always builds a place for, not for today, but always for tomorrow. Yeah? I think by the time you've completed your building, it's already tomorrow. So I think architecture always have to think about tomorrow. Now, the idea of creating something for tomorrow is problematic because of this. Because the construction of the future is as much contested as the reconstruction of the past. You know the politics of history. Everyone or every regime, or even, you know, if you read the story of kingdoms, etc., maybe even now, that every regime tried to write their own history about the past because the past determined their identity now. But while, you know, the latter or the history is concerned about identity that might strengthen or weaken the present status, the former, which is the future, is about change. Control about construction about the future is control over the power to change and to be there first, to get a hold on the resources of the future. Actually, there is now what is called future studies, a discipline which is now quite established in some universities, and it likes to see the future as a resource, as a reality yet to be shaped now. Because if you don't imagine your future now, someone else will imagine your future for you. It happened in the past, and it's still happening in all over the world. So the competition to imagine our own future is actually very actual. For example, the Lucky Garden has become like this. Yeah? After the local authority relented and failed to take away the flowers, as they call it, there's a group of people who, wrap it around with these banners, but they are concerned only about the visibility of their banners, so they do whatever they can only on the outside of the garden. But Sextant and their friend and his friends are more concerned about the inside, about how to get people inside it, how to use the space rather than to have a look at the space. I think by conclusion is that a place is not an empty public space or building, but it is about the presence of people. And that's what I'm trying to say with the examples of this Lucky Garden. The presence of people, not just as individuals, but people as a community, people that converse to each other, people with voices. So it is a place is about who is controlling the space and who is doing what and voicing what in the space. I think, therefore, architecture needs to be designed for people, obviously, and support, and this is, I think, another thing that I want to add, and supports building of community and common space, meaning that architecture should be open or should make it possible for community to take care of the space, to control the space, or even perhaps to modify the space, to transform the space by using it or by even, intervene in the construction of it. The question is, now that we live in cities that are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, is it really possible to build an urban community? Perhaps not at a totality as an urban community, but perhaps as Z has been trying with her friends, postcode by postcode. City always consists of communities. Maybe it could not be one big community, but still it consists of many communities, and it is possible to have communities that are alive, that are conversing to each other. And I think to do that, we not only need real physical spaces, but we need some kind of common perception, common values, common knowledge about our cities. And that's what my organization do. We have a website where people can find almost anything or most of anything about Jakarta, for example. It's called RUJAK. I'm sure you know RUJAK. We use that word for our organization because RUJAK, the fruit salad, it's the same. We have it all over Indonesia, and you can have your own taste with it. It is colorful, it is healthy, so it is a good name to symbolize urban life and urban communities. We have also a website where we can report any problem, a website where we can report anything, and we can upload pictures, and we can pinpoint location of what we are reporting. The website is now, for example, monitored by the city government of Jakarta, which just changed. In the past government, I tried to tell them, but for 1 year there is no follow-up. But with the new administration, in 1 day, okay, we will just follow this website and we will follow up whatever reported here. It's very simple, because if you want to to monitor what is reported here, you just go to the Get Alert button and then subscribe your email address, and then every time there is a report, you will be notified. So it's very actually nice machine for local government to take care of whatever reported by their citizens. We publish books, sorry it was kind of slipped around, which consists of many data, historical series of data on the city, which help people to better understand the city without getting into conspiracy theory. Which happened, last time there was a big fire during campaign time for the election of our new governor, there was fire, and people started to speculate, wow, this fire is related to this political heating up. We said, no, actually, according to our data, it happens every year that the statistic says there will be between 700 to 900 fires every year in Jakarta, and the peak months are between August to September. And at that time, it was September. It was already 500 fires. So rather than speculating about this is related to political heating up or not, it's better to anticipate the next 200 fires with all people. And then, you know, the issue, the gossip stopped because of facts. So we think it is important that we have kind of common knowledge about the facts of our city, historical, its development, its people, etc. And we can do this easily now with a crowdsourcing machine like what we have with the reporting machine. We also published this kind of book about how city planning is practiced. So how citizens can be involved in the process of city planning, including some very practical forms where you can report your neighbors if they kind of violate your privacy or whatever with their construction work. So it's a very simple booklet, a guide for citizens about how the city is actually built and what rules are applied. So these we think is rule or equipments that we can think of when we aspire to build urban communities, which is, in my opinion, is a requirement if we think about space and as a place. A space becomes a place only when there are people using it and taking care of it. Oh, I will just skip this. This is a place that we are building, but I just want to say what happened to you after May the 5th. A lot of people are anxious to see changes, but I hope the changes will also mean changes in or increase in the sense of community in the city. So I said to Seksan and his friends, even if Malaysia did not change after the 5th of May, at least I think Kuala Lumpur has already changed because of their activities in the Lucky Garden of Bangsar, and it might be happening in other places. And I think it's quite practical to continue these activities and events without expecting the bigger change of the country. Thank you.